All right, so today we're diving into the world of Ted Bundy,
Oh, yeah.
and we're going to get into some of the psychology behind his crimes and try to figure out how someone so seemingly normal
Right.
could commit such horrific acts.
Well, it's interesting that Bundy's crimes happened during the 1970s, a time of like massive cultural
Oh,
shifts,
yeah, for sure.
like Vietnam War protests,
Yeah.
the women's liberation movement.
Hmm.
There was this feeling of change all over.
Right.
But then, like, underneath it all, you had Bundy operating in the shadows.
So it's like this weird contrast, like society's pushing for all this positive change,
Yeah.
but then this predator is like taking advantage of it.
Exactly. And it just shows us that no matter how much progress we think society is making,
Right.
you can't just ignore that, like, darker side of human nature.
For sure.
Evil never takes a break.
Okay, so let's start with Bundy's early life.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, sure.
Born Theodore Robert Cowell,
Yeah.
raised by his grandparents, thinking his mom was his sister.
Yeah. They totally hid his real parents.
Wow.
Created all this secrecy from the start. I mean, whether that directly caused his later actions,
Right.
it's hard to say for sure, but
Yeah.
it definitely adds another layer to this whole puzzle.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's like the beginning of some crazy psychological thriller.
Yeah.
And even though Bundy said he had a normal upbringing, I mean, come on, you have all these unanswered questions about his dad,
Mm-hmm.
this totally made-up family structure.
Yeah.
That stuff has to leave a mark.
Oh, absolutely. Those early experiences shape who we are, how we see the world.
Right.
You can't just ignore them when you're trying to figure out what made Bundy who he was.
Okay, so now here comes the really creepy part.
Okay.
People who knew him back then
Yeah.
described him as charismatic, intelligent, even articulate.
Huh.
I mean, that's not exactly what you picture when you think serial killer.
Not at all. And that's what made him so dangerous. He was like a master of disguise,
Yeah.
He could project this image of being totally normal. Uh-huh.
And it completely hid his true nature.
Wow.
That difference between who he appeared to be and this like inner darkness,
Mm-hmm.
that's a theme you see over and over in his story.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important lesson for all of us even today.
It's scary because it makes you question everything you think you know about how to spot evil.
Yeah.
You think it's going to be obvious,
Right.
like some monster out of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But Bundy proves that evil can look totally normal.
Absolutely. He used that normalcy as a weapon.
Wow.
It made him almost impossible to catch.
Right.
And then you have those early crimes, those petty thefts.
Yeah.
They're like little hints, early warning signs that something is off.
When I first learned about those early offenses,
Yeah.
I thought about how we tend to brush off those smaller crimes,
Yeah.
but they can be a sign of something much darker.
Oh, they can definitely foreshadow something way worse.
So Bundy's official reign of terror, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
started in 1974.
He mostly went after young, attractive women,
Right.
usually with long hair parted down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And his methods were so calculated.
Yeah.
He'd fake injuries, use an arm sling, sometimes even pretend to be like a cop or something,
Wow.
just to gain their trust.
It's like he was studying how people act.
Yeah.
Figuring out what made them vulnerable and then using that against them.
Right.
He knew that we naturally want to help people who are hurting,
Right.
and he twisted that empathy for his own sick purposes.
That makes you wonder if he felt any remorse at all,
Right.
or if he just saw people as like pieces in his own game.
That's the question that's been haunting experts for decades.
Yeah.
To really get inside Bundy's head, I think we have to look at it from the perspective of forensic psychology.
Okay. So what does that mean?
Well, a forensic psychologist might say that Bundy showed classic psychopathic tendencies.
Okay, so break that down for me. What does that actually look like?
Well, imagine someone who just can't feel empathy. Someone who can totally disconnect themselves from the emotional consequences of their actions.
Wow.
It's not about being crazy in the traditional sense.
Right.
It's more like their brains are wired differently.
Yo.
They process emotions differently, and they don't connect with other people in the same way.
So he could like act concerned, even compassionate,
Yeah,
but it was all fake.
exactly. Being able to mimic normal human emotions was a key part of how he manipulated people.
Right.
It let him gain the trust of his victims, while at the same time distancing himself from the horror of what he was doing.
It's almost like he was playing a character, putting on this mask of sanity
Yeah.
to hide the darkness underneath.
And that mask was so convincing
Yeah.
that he was able to stay free for years.
And then there was his escapes not once,
know.
but twice.
Crazy.
In 1977, he jumps out of a courthouse window in Colorado,
Yeah.
and he's on the run for days.
It's like a movie.
It really is.
Those escapes show how bold he was.
Right.
Like he thought he was invincible.
Yeah. But they also show that the system wasn't ready for someone like him.
And I bet it made people even more scared.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
He became this almost mythical figure.
Right.
This shadowy boogeyman everyone was afraid of.
It must have been terrifying knowing he could be anywhere.
It was. It tapped into this primal fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Like evil could be lurking anywhere, even in places you thought were safe.
And after he escaped to Florida, his crimes got even worse.
Yeah.
The attack on the Chi Omega sorority house in January of '78 was just brutal.
Yeah, that was a turning point.
So violent, it felt different.
Oh, absolutely. The Chi Omega attack was horrific.
Yeah.
He attacked 4 women in one night, killed 2 of them.
It's hard to even imagine.
It was a level of violence that shocked even the police who had seen it all.
It must have been a wake-up call for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't just a few isolated incidents.
Right.
This was a predator who was getting more and more dangerous.
Exactly. And the public was terrified. The media was in a frenzy.
Yeah.
Bundy had become like a living nightmare. And then he gets caught for a
Yeah.
traffic violation in February '78.
I know, right? It's almost anticlimactic.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like this reminder that even the smartest criminals can make dumb mistakes.
Yeah. Bundy was so used to charming his way out of trouble, but this time it was different.
This time, the evidence was everywhere.
It was.
The bite mark on one of the Charm Mega victims, witnesses who put him at the scene,
Yeah.
and tons of forensic data.
This time his charm wouldn't work. The game had changed.
He wasn't this ghost anymore.
Nope.
He was caught, and the evidence was piling up against him.
It was.
So Bundy's locked up, right? The evidence is there.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd finally come clean and admit to what he did?
Nope, not Bundy.
Really?
He saw those trials as his last chance to be the center of attention.
Oh,
He insisted on being his own lawyer.
no way.
Loved having all those cameras on him, playing to the crowd.
It's like the courtroom was his stage or something.
Exactly.
So even when he's facing the death penalty, he's still more worried about putting on a show.
That's narcissism for you.
It's unbelievable.
His narcissism was always there.
Right.
It drove him his need for control, thinking he was smarter than everyone else.
Even the justice system.
Even the justice system. And with all that evidence stacked against him,
Yeah.
he still thought he could manipulate his way out of it.
It's like he was living in a different reality.
Yeah, it shows how powerful self-deception can be.
It's scary.
And it's a reminder that we can't underestimate people with those kinds of narcissistic traits.
But the evidence was just too much.
It was.
The bite mark, the
Yeah.
witnesses, the forensics,
Mhm.
it all pointed to him.
Right.
And in 1980, he's sentenced to death.
Finally.
But even then, it's not over.
No, it wasn't. There were almost 10 years of appeals and interviews.
Wow.
And Bundy trying to control the story even from death row.
Like he was clinging to life, trying to delay the inevitable.
It's like he couldn't accept it.
And then finally, on January 24th, 1989,
Yeah.
it's over.
Mm.
He's executed in Florida.
It was a huge media event. People gathered outside the prison.
I can imagine.
Some were celebrating that it was finally over.
Right.
Others were just thinking about everything that led up to that moment.
It must have been a strange mix of emotions.
It was. For a lot of people, it felt like the end of a nightmare.
I bet there was a huge sense of relief across the country.
Oh, absolutely. The thought that he couldn't hurt anyone else must have been like a weight lifted off everyone's shoulders.
So Bundy's story ends there.
Legally, yeah.
Yeah,
But his case is still fascinating and disturbing.
it is.
It makes you think about the nature of evil, how someone can seem so normal,
Right.
but be capable of such horrible things.
You try to make sense of it, you know.
I know.
Put it in a box, but with Bundy, it just doesn't fit.
You're right. There are no easy answers. His motivations are still a mystery.
And that's what makes him so intriguing to people.
It is. It's a puzzle that criminologists, psychologists, even just true crime fans are still trying to solve.
Yeah, how can someone be so charming and so monstrous at the same time?
Yeah. It's almost like he represents this dark potential that's inside all of us.
It's a reminder that evil can wear a friendly face.
Exactly. Bundy shattered our ideas about what evil looks like.
Yeah.
He showed us that monsters can hide in plain sight.
So anyone could be harboring dark secrets.
It's a scary thought.
It really is. It makes you realize how important it is to be aware.
Absolutely.
You can't just rely on stereotypes or appearances.
Nope. You have to trust your gut. Be careful in situations that feel off.
So what can we learn from Bundy?
Well, his case shows us that predatory behavior is complicated. There's no simple solution. But it does highlight how important awareness is.
Mm.
Trusting your instincts, being cautious.
Like how Bundy used fake injuries to gain trust.
Yeah,
He knew people would want to help.
exactly. Predators often use our empathy against us.
That's scary.
It is. We need to recognize those tactics, how they groom their victims, the red flags we often miss.
And it's not just about personal safety.
No, you're right. It's about creating a culture where we talk about these issues.
Yeah.
Where victims feel safe coming forward and where perpetrators are held accountable.
Bundy's case also shows how important a strong justice system is.
Oh, definitely. One that can handle these kinds of crimes.
Right.
It reminds us that we need to keep getting better at investigating these cases,
Yeah.
improving our forensics and understanding criminal psychology.
So we need to adapt as criminals get more sophisticated.
Exactly. We can't get complacent. The stakes are too high.
We've talked about Bundy's life, his crimes, his trial, his execution,
Yeah.
and his legacy.
It's a lot to process.
But even after all that, there's still unanswered questions.
There are. Bundy confessed to 30 murders,
Right.
but some experts think the real number is much higher.
Oh, wow.
There are still families out there wondering what happened to their loved ones.
Still searching for answers after all these years.
Yeah.
It's a chilling reminder that even when a case is closed, there can still be so much pain left behind.
Yeah, it's just awful to think about those families, still wondering what happened after all this time.
It's tragic. It really shows you how much damage Bundy caused.
Absolutely. And we have to be careful. We can't let all the mystery, the fascination with Bundy himself
Yeah.
overshadow the victims and their families,
Right.
their stories, their pain, their loss.
That's what matters.
That's where our focus should be.
It's about remembering the people who were hurt,
Yeah.
honoring their memory, and supporting those who were left behind.
And we can all do our part.
Right.
We can support organizations that help victims of violence. We
Yeah.
can speak out against violence in our communities.
Hmm.
We can work to build a more empathetic and understanding world.
I think the lessons we can learn from Bundy's case are still relevant today.
Oh, absolutely. They're timeless.
It's like a reminder that evil can be hiding anywhere.
It can.
It doesn't always look like a monster in a movie.
Nope. It can be disguised as charm, as normalcy,
Right.
even as someone trying to help.
It shows how important it is for all of us to stay aware, to protect ourselves and our communities. So after this deep dive into Bundy's world, what's the biggest takeaway for you?
Even though we've talked a lot about Bundy today,
Yeah.
I don't think we can ever really understand that level of darkness.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
But by looking at these cases, studying the patterns and the why behind these horrific acts,
Mm-hmm.
we can learn valuable things that might prevent future tragedies.
So it's about learning from the past
Yeah.
to make a safer future.
Yeah.
We can't change what happened,
Right.
but we can use this knowledge to be more aware, more vigilant, more proactive.
Exactly. We have to protect ourselves and others. It's about being informed and empowered, being a force for good in the world.
I love that. Well, thank you for joining us on this journey.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a dark topic,
Yeah.
but an important one to explore. I hope you leave today with a sense of awareness
Yeah.
and a desire to help create a world where these kinds of horrors are a thing of the past.